NASA scientists first spotting 3I Atlas in July, just a tiny speck of light sailing through a sea of stars, a mind-bogglingly rare visitor from outside our solar system.
It was 3:14 a.m., and somewhere beyond the orbit of Mars, a signal unlike anything ever recorded by human technology had just erupted from the void. The source? A comet known as 3I Atlas, an interstellar object traveling through the solar system at over 100,000 miles per hour. Inside the Jet Propulsion Laboratory's mission control room, the hum of machines mixed with the low murmur of engineers. Dozens of eyes stared at screens filled with static, graphs, and light curves. The initial readings made no sense. A pattern, repeating, structured, and too precise to be random, was appearing in the data stream from the Deep Space Network antenna in Goldstone. For hours, technicians tried to explain it away. Equipment error, cosmic rays, glitches in telemetry, but the signal persisted. It pulsed at regular intervals, rising and falling with a rhythm that mimicked intelligent transmission. By 4 a.m., NASA had locked onto the source. It was coming directly from 3I Atlas, the third confirmed interstellar object ever discovered. This was no ordinary comet. Unlike anything born within our solar system, it came from another star, moving on a hyperbolic trajectory that meant it would never return once it passed the Sun. But now it was behaving like no comet ever had. Dr. Evelyn Harker, lead astronomer for the 3I Atlas observation campaign, stood frozen before the main display. The room was silent, except for the beeping of monitors and the faint hum of air conditioning. "That's not natural," she whispered, staring at the repeating waveforms. The frequency was narrow-band, a tight spike of energy that seemed to carry modulation, a form of encoded data. It was as if something aboard that icy fragment was broadcasting. At 4:23 a.m., the call went out to NASA headquarters in Washington. Within minutes, the administrator was on a secure line. The message was short, but it carried weight that shook the scientific establishment to its core. "We may be observing an artificial transmission from 3I Atlas," Harker said flatly. Half a world away, telescopes from Chile to Hawaii swung toward the coordinates. The European Space Agency's tracking array in Spain confirmed the readings. So did Japan's JAXA station. The signal was real. It was repeating every 53 minutes and 42 seconds, structured in triplets. 3 bursts, a pause, 3 more bursts, and then silence. It had begun precisely when 3I Atlas crossed a specific point in its orbit near the plane of the ecliptic, a place no one expected activity. As the data flowed in, analysts began decoding the waveform. What they found stunned them. Within the modulation lay mathematical sequences, prime numbers arranged in ascending order. Then came something else, a strange oscillation that looked eerily like a binary pattern. If this was a natural phenomenon, it was the most elaborate ever observed. If it was artificial, humanity had just made contact with something from beyond. At 6 a.m., NASA convened an emergency meeting. The briefing room filled with scientists, intelligence officers, and military liaisons from Space Command. Screens displayed the trajectory of 3I Atlas, now less than 2 astronomical units from Earth. The object was spinning, releasing periodic jets of gas from vents across its surface. But one of those jets seemed to align perfectly with the direction of the signal, as if it were a transmitter pointing toward our planet. By sunrise, the world's media had caught wind of the rumors. Leaks from inside JPL suggested NASA had intercepted a signal from deep space. Social media exploded with speculation. Alien probe, interstellar beacon, government cover-up. Hashtags trended worldwide. But behind the scenes, NASA worked tirelessly to verify the source. Every antenna of the Deep Space Network, Goldstone in California, Madrid in Spain, Canberra in Australia, was turned toward 3I Atlas. And with each rotation of the object, the signal returned, unwavering. At 8:15 a.m., President Walters was briefed. the Situation Room filled with advisors, scientists, and generals. On a large monitor, the waveform flickered in real time. It was undeniable. A pulse of energy was reaching Earth from an object that should have been inert. For the first time in history, NASA prepared to send a message not to another spacecraft, but to an unknown source traveling between the stars. Engineers at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory reconfigured the Deep Space Network to transmit on the same frequency. A simple reply, a sequence of prime numbers, was encoded and sent toward 3I Atlas. It would take hours for the signal to reach its target, but when it did, humanity would have spoken back. Meanwhile, the world watched. News anchors struggled to contain their excitement. Every major network broadcast live coverage of the signal from 3I Atlas. Scientists debated on air. Some said it was an alien probe. Others said it was a cosmic coincidence. Religious leaders called for calm. Conspiracy theorists claimed NASA had known all along. Then, 12 hours after the initial detection, the unthinkable happened. The signal changed. At precisely 3:14 p.m., the waveform doubled in amplitude. Its frequency modulated rapidly, forming complex patterns that no longer resembled simple mathematics. Spectrograms displayed intricate designs, layered frequencies, and harmonics that defied explanation. For the first time, the transmission appeared reactive. It was as if something or someone had heard the human reply and was responding. In Houston, engineers stared at their screens, mouths agape. The data wasn't random, it was evolving. The binary sequences began forming repeating symbols, structures that looked like schematics, perhaps even star maps. Artificial intelligence programs at the SETI Institute began decoding patterns that corresponded to spatial coordinates. Those coordinates pointed to a region near the constellation Lyra, the same region from which 3I Atlas was believed to have originated. At NASA headquarters, tension filled the air. Every decision was recorded, every observation double-checked. Dr. Harker addressed the room. If this continues, we may be witnessing direct communication from an interstellar civilization. But others weren't convinced. The Pentagon dispatched a classified team to evaluate whether the signal could represent a threat. The Department of Defense worried that an object this large, approaching the inner solar system, could pose risks beyond communication. The possibility of a non-natural structure, a probe, a drone, or worse, couldn't be ruled out. By nightfall, the first optical confirmation arrived from the James Webb Space Telescope. High-resolution infrared imaging revealed something astonishing. Beneath the surface of 3I Atlas, faint geometric patterns appeared. Straight lines, concentric circles, and right angles buried under translucent ice. It was enough to send shockwaves through the scientific world. Across the globe, humanity held its breath. Days passed. The signal continued, growing stronger as 3I Atlas drew closer to the Sun. Spectral analysis revealed the object's composition: carbon dioxide ice, silicates, traces of metals. But deep within, an anomaly appeared. A hollow region, a cavity measuring nearly 100 meters in diameter. Some called it a chamber, others called it a hull. NASA launched an emergency mission concept. If they could redirect a probe, perhaps the aging OSIRIS-REx spacecraft still drifting near Earth, they might get a closer look. Within 48 hours, engineers began plotting intercept trajectories. SpaceX volunteered to launch a fast reconnaissance probe using the Starship platform. Humanity was mobilizing. Then came the silence. 3 days after the first signal, 3I Atlas stopped transmitting. Completely. The data stream vanished. No pulse, no pattern, nothing but cosmic background noise. The object continued on its path, inert once again. NASA scrambled to confirm, but every station reported the same thing. The signal was gone. For a moment, hope turned to confusion. Had the object shut down? Was the signal ever real? Had humanity just witnessed the briefest brush with intelligence beyond Earth? Weeks later, when 3I Atlas passed its closest point to the Sun, new data emerged. Instruments aboard the Solar Orbiter spacecraft caught something extraordinary. As the object neared perihelion, it fragmented, not from heat, but from an internal explosion. Observers described it as controlled, deliberate, almost surgical. Pieces of the object scattered into space, each glowing briefly before vanishing into the dark. In the aftermath, scientists analyzed the debris. Among the fragments were metallic traces never before seen in comets, highly refined alloys, impossible to explain by natural processes. NASA classified the material immediately. Samples were labeled under the highest level of secrecy. The official explanation: volatile outgassing event. But those who had seen the data knew better. Within NASA's secure archives, a new file was created, labeled 3I Atlas Incident Report, Restricted Access. Inside it were the signal recordings, the decoded prime sequences, and a 3D reconstruction of the final transmission pattern, a geometric structure resembling a sphere surrounded by 6 smaller orbits. Some said it was a map. Others believed it was a message, somewhere beyond the orbit of Jupiter. NASA reactivated its listening arrays. The signal was weak, but unmistakable. It carried the same mathematical structure, the same signature modulation. Whatever had sent the first message was still out there, moving deeper into the solar system. Somewhere, beyond the cold reaches of the solar system, something had listened, and it had answered. If you're still watching, ask yourself this: was 3I Atlas truly a comet? Or was it a messenger passing through, leaving a sign for those willing to look? Whatever the truth, NASA's silence speaks louder than words. And as the next interstellar object approaches, one question remains: will we be ready when it sends its signal?